My family is rich. To be more precise, my mother's side of the family is filthy rich. They are greedy and miserly, making them very unpleasant to coexist with. Only one person in that branch of the family has ever shown a genuine semblance of interest in my small family. My Uncle Terry. From the cesspool of crappy relatives that I have, Uncle Terry is the only one who has been there for me when I needed it. He is the only relative who has had a constant positive presence throughout my childhood. Around 9 p.m., Uncle Terry called me to ask if I would house-sit his favorite vacational home. I was trying to deny his offer because I had just gotten a part-time job, but he was persistent nonetheless. He has a lakeside home that is located in an isolated villa up in the mountains. The home is a simple yet luxurious 4-bedroom house that has an instant view of Lake Triumph, a body of water that has the feel of an oasis. It's a stunning area. "Oliver, you'd be doing me a massive favor if you could stay here for 3 months while I'm on vacation," he said insistently. "I'm more than willing, Uncle, but I do have a job that I just got, and I can't afford—" He interrupted me mid-sentence. "I'll pay you. Money isn't a problem. I'm serious. You're the only person I truly trust to live in my home." I knew money wasn't a problem for him, so I relented. The deal was too enticing. So I packed my belongings that same day. He did share a detail that slightly hurt my resolve to heed his request. "I do have a recommendation for when you get there. Please do not go swimming. I know it's going to be tempting, it's a beautiful lake, but we had 2 people who drowned last summer and their bodies were never found. There was a massive search, but the lake is deep and they ended up stopping the search after 2 weeks. He cautioned me thoroughly. It was too late to back out now, so we discussed my payment, and I started the drive to Lake Triumph the next day, bright and early. It took me 2 days to make the trek up to Lake Triumph. My uncle had paid me in advance to cover gas and food expenses. I made it there extremely early. The first rays of dawn were just barely peeking over the horizon as I pulled up to my uncle's house. His neighbor's home caught my attention immediately as I parked. It was an imposing structure. The house was monolithic compared to any of the nearby homes. Its brown paint was emaciated by time, and its wood cladding was eroded, with moss filling the empty spaces. Strangely though, its lawn was cared for and nicely trimmed, almost professionally done. The only sign of life that this Goliath of a mansion had was an old sun-bleached kids' playground, which made the stark contrast between the poshness of the lawn and the senescence of the home significant. I walked into my uncle's front yard, looking for the key to the home. Uncle Terry said he'd left it under the flower pot. His wife, Grace, had at least 10 of them. Funny enough, this lakeside home was a wedding gift to my uncle from my rapacious grandpa, a rare moment of generosity from the old coot. When I found the key, I entered and resisted the urge to fall on the couch because I needed to witness it while everyone else was asleep. I headed out to the backyard and was kissed by the crisp morning air that was flooded by the aqueous scent of the green translucent lake. Thin fog and dozens of dragonflies floated over the water. I wanted to lay down, but the grass was way too damp for that, so I just contemplated the scene, standing there for a while. As I turned to go back inside, I heard something from the lake make bubbles and move in the water. The fish were starting to stir, I assumed. I couldn't wait to enjoy the lake. I woke around noon. The 2-day trip was taking effect on my body, but I wanted to go fishing. I wanted to enjoy being by the lake to compensate for not being allowed to swim. I could disobey, but I don't really fancy the thought of drowning. The afternoon was relaxing. The temperature was just right for being outdoors. Not even the insects were bothering me. They seemed to be solely focused on gravitating over the lake. It was a heavenly summer day. Throughout the afternoon, I wasn't able to catch a single fish, even though I could swear I heard their movements earlier. It was almost as if the lake was lifeless. Not a single pull on my bait. In the end, it was inconsequential, because I fell asleep at the water's edge and woke to darkness hours later. It took me a minute to remember where I was. Eventually my confusion subsided and I sat up to gather my fishing tools. From a distance, I could see a light that was directly behind my uncle's house. I was very unfamiliar with the area, so I decided to proceed with caution. I put my stuff in a thick bush to avoid making noise and continued, making sure to keep hidden behind trees and bushes. I managed to get close enough that I could see the figure holding the light. It was an elderly man that was wearing a black bathrobe. He was standing by the water, whistling as if beckoning something toward him. The clouds started fleeting across the night sky, letting the pale moon rain down in intervals on the old man as he spoke to the lake.
"Come on out, old friend. Have to know how much longer I have to wait until I recover what I've lost."
His voice was hoarse, as if he hadn't spoken in a very long time. I was frozen in place because a heartbeat later, the most vile, inhuman sound met my ears. It was a gurgling imitation of the old man's voice. The sound emitted from the lake. It made me think of a drowning person struggling to breathe. But the water in their desperate lungs was preventing them from performing the natural body function. It was not replying to the old man. It was merely repeating what he said, and the old man acted like he was in a lively conversation.
"I know I'm impatient. You're my only companion, old friend. Without you, I would be so lonely, just rotting in my home."
He put his lantern down and picked up a bag that was sitting near his feet as the unknown thing continued to grotesquely mimic him. I could not see the contents of the plastic bag, but I heard the splash it made when he threw the contents into the dark lake. What ensued was a series of gross crunching noises that only a feral animal could produce whilst devouring its prey.
"Soon, you're gonna make my wish come true, and we won't be alone anymore."
The old man stood there singing to himself while listening to the symphony of flesh being devoured that exuded from the lake. After a while, the crude mastication ceased, and the old man lumbered slowly back into his home, humming to himself, content. I had to crawl back into my uncle's home. My legs had gone completely numb. The pins and needles tortured me whilst I dragged myself inside. I needed to call my uncle immediately. He answered after the fifth call. He sounded sleepy as he answered.
"Oliver, sorry, it's really early here in Italy. Is something wrong?"
I told him about the old man trespassing into the backyard. I kept specific details of the old man's ritual to myself, hoping my uncle had seen something similar from his neighbour before.
"That was old William. I completely forgot about him. Sorry, Oliver. Interact as little as possible with him. You did the right thing not approaching him," he said apologetically. "Old man William is 70 years old. He lives alone. There's a rumor among the other neighbors that his family, who previously lived with him, had him chained to the floor of his basement. But who knows if any of that is true?"
My skin prickled at the disturbing detail. My Uncle Terry continued to talk about old William nonchalantly.
"If you have any further problems with him, talk to his home aide, John. He stops by the old man's mansion every Monday and Thursday, or whenever the old man needs him."
"Have you ever had any problems with him?" I asked, a bit desperate. I could feel he was close to ending the call.
Not really, he just gets confused and wanders into our side occasionally. The lake is technically a common area, so he's not trespassing per se, but it is freaky to find him on occasion sleeping on the grass or on our back porch.
I was mortified. He reassured me that old man William was harmless. I wasn't so sure. Every fibre of my body was telling me otherwise. My uncle had not experienced what I had. He was living in blissful ignorance. I couldn't sleep after he had ended the call. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to hold him on the phone any longer. Every shadow was making me jump, so like a child, I turned on the TV, not caring what channel. I just needed the noise. I eventually managed to doze off, and in the morning, I woke to some type of Christian sermon channel playing on the television. The pastor was giving one of the most aggressive sermons I'd ever actually heard.
By the precious blood of Jesus Christ, her sins will be judged, and God will cast you into the lake that burns with fire and brimstone, where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth, where the fire is never quenched, and where the worm dieth not. It is a place called hell, and hell is real. Jesus spoke more of hell than he did of heaven.
I turned it off after that last verse. It was making me uncomfortable. My family is Christian, and any verse or sermon that talks about hell or the end time scares me to no end. I decided to sit outside on the front porch, staring at the empty road. I wanted to leave, but I couldn't. The fear of disappointing my uncle, the only relative who cares about me and who is a whole ocean away, had me chained down to this place. What would I say? That a geriatric old man scared me and I ran away after being paid? No. I couldn't stop mulling over my dilemma extensively. Thankfully, the roar of an old brown Honda Odyssey snapped me out of my introspective stupor. Out of the struggling minivan emerged a tall, burly man who was dressed in dark blue nurse-like scrubs. The bear of a man had a bag full of cleaning supplies that he started using on the children's playground. I headed over to introduce myself. I was sure this was Old Man William's home aide, John. I'm not the most extroverted social butterfly, but I managed the most cheerful "Good morning" I could. He looked up.
"Oh, hello, you must be a new face around," he said while spraying the water on the swing. "What brings you around? Are you related to them?"
he said whilst pointing at my uncle's home. I told him my name and explained my situation, making sure to add surface-level details of my encounter with his employer.
"Oh yeah, the old codger can give you a good scare if you're not paying attention," he said while scratching his head. "I know from personal experience. The old codger spends most of his time in his basement, and he has made me jump out of my skin when I'm cleaning. Sometimes he just stands and stares at me from the doorways," John said.
He then leaned in and said in a hushed tone, "I only continue to work for him because he pays well, so I ignore his weird behaviors and the strange tasks he makes me do," he said, motioning towards the playground. "Why has he got you cleaning the old playground?" I asked, confused.
"He says he needs it to be in perfect condition for when his family and his grandchildren come back. I've tried contacting his family. They do not want anything to do with him, and his grandchildren are young adults now. I don't know about you, but between us, you would think they'd be falling in line for that will money," John said, shrugging.
The old man's family was the opposite of mine. They fall in line for my grandpa's will like vultures to a carcass. They all want a piece. I hate my grandpa. He is a greedy bastard, and I really wish I didn't have to interact with him. He's the type of person who studies people to see if they are worth his time, specifically his own flesh and blood. If he feels your presence a waste of time, you are shunned instantly. You still get invited to major events like birthdays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and all that, but it's like you don't exist. And that's how my dad, mum, and yours truly gets treated. It's obnoxious. What does he do in his basement? I asked, hoping to get something useful out of the conversation. All I was getting was that the old man William was creepy, which I already knew, and that his family didn't love him.
He paints a lot. I think he's converted the basement into an art studio, he said, now fully invested into the conversation. The basement is the one place I'm not allowed to be in, but he brings the paintings upstairs. They're actually pretty impressive. Do you want to see them?
I wanted to reject his offer, but I accepted. I wanted to find a way to rationalize what I had seen and heard the previous night. John first checked to make sure that old man William had secluded himself into his basement. The inside of the mansion was dull and antiquely furnished, like what you would expect an old person's home to look like. The stairs of the mansion seemed to have a life of their own. They creaked without being stepped on. John led me down a narrow hallway that was covered in medium-sized paintings. The dark green walls were covered to the brim with canvases depicting Lake Triumph. The color scheme of the paintings were purely composed of earthy tones, green and brown. Some portrayed the lake surrounded by people staring down at the water. Others showed the same people floating in the lake, looking up at the sky. The fully clothed people that were floating in the water looked soulless. Their drifting bodies seemed abandoned. While the paintings were impressive, they felt full of silent despair. It was unnerving. If I had to compare them to something else, I would say Goya's black paintings. A thought occurred to me as I studied the paintings closer. Was the old man using the medium of painting to fill the hole his family had left? I also noticed something curious. The paintings were signed Lake Halal. I pointed this out to John. I thought these paintings were of Lake Triumph. Is this a different lake?
It's Lake Triumph, alright. According to Mr. William, Lake Halal was the original name of the lake until it was bought by wealthy investors and the area was developed, creating the villa we're in.
I felt like I was suffocating. The eyes of the people in the painting were boring into me, so I excused myself and left John back to his work. I went back to the lake to retrieve my fishing stuff. I felt safer during the day when I could see my surroundings clearly. I stared at the dragonflies as they were flying by. Before then, I didn't know how varied in colors they were. Blue, red, green, yellow. Their beautiful colors were iridescent, and their exoskeletons looked gradient in the sunlight. Dragonflies in certain regions of Mexico are called caballitos del diablo, which translates to horses of the devil. I wonder if Satan himself resides in the waters of Lake Triumph. I know I'm being illogical, making connections where there aren't any, but I don't know what to think. As I carried my stuff back, I saw dark, menacing clouds overtaking the sky rapidly. The dragonflies were in a frenzy as I ran. They were flying into my face, trying to get in my eyes. After 10 minutes, it started pouring. I could hear John's cursing as he fled into the old man's mansion. The ambience outside took on a grey, sickly tone. The wind was wailing like a crying woman, and the trees were swaying back and forth, performing a twisted dance with the wind. The heavens were furious. I peeked outside to look at the lake whilst it stormed intensely. Old Man William was out there by the water, which was getting pummeled by the rain and debris. His arms were spread as if embracing the storm. He was screaming. I couldn't hear what he was saying because the storm was washing away his voice. Out of the blue, John ran into the punishing rain, grabbing the old man and hauling him back inside the mansion. The old man was smiling a toothless grin while he and his aide were being soaked. I was finally able to make out what he was screaming. All along, he was screaming, "It's time." That night I dreamed a spectral nightmare. My fear of Old Man William and the raging storm had tainted my slumber and gave birth to this abomination of a dream. In this night terror, I was standing idly in an old dirt floor basement. The surroundings of the hot underground room were black as night. A single naked light bulb was hanging down from the low ceiling. The light was blinding. I was disoriented. My world was spinning in circles. The only thing that was keeping me grounded was the slow scraping of a chain being dragged on the cracked dirt floor. It was him, that decrepit old man. He was pacing in circles. The yellow light lit his blotchy, leathery skin as he ranted alone in the dark room, ignoring my presence.
"Oh, my angel, my beloved angel, they cut your wings like they did to me. That's why we dwell in the depths. They don't understand, they cannot comprehend that eternity is a lie. Nothing lasts, not even the divine. We're all rotting. We have to hold on to each other. We will reclaim what is rightfully ours soon enough. The moment will arrive."
He had completed his clockwise rotation, so he stood in front of me, facing away, staring into the shadows. He slowly turned in my direction, finally acknowledging my intrusion. His voice gurgled as if he were on the verge of vomiting.
"They are mud."
The dark green bile surged from within him, spilling over his dry lips, spraying onto my face and causing me to wake up from the abhorrent nightmare. I could still smell the viscous bile, a mix of rotten baby food and stomach acid. I coughed and spat at the floor, trying to rid myself of the nasty smell. I felt nauseous, and my right ear was inexplicably hot and moist. I felt like utter shit. I went to the bathroom to find towels to clean the mess I had created. I noticed the sound of a flailing door and stumbled my way to the living room to figure out what was going on. I had left the back door open. The outside door was being flung back and forth like a rag doll in the storm. I had left the door wide open for anyone to come inside and make themselves at home. The next couple of days were a frightening mess of tornado watches, tornado warnings, and incessant severe thunderstorms. Many dragonflies and other vermin were sticking to the windows, clinging on for dear life whilst the storms raged throughout the mountain. The weather was so bad that John seemed to be stranded in the old man's home. His van was still parked in the driveway. Poor guy was alone with that old man. Meanwhile, I was living in a delirium. I kept checking the window to see if any tornado had landed nearby. There was no phone service when I needed it, and the constant barrage of severe weather alerts when there was a sliver of service made me want to smash my phone. I was going insane. My dreams weren't any help either. Every night I was having nightmares of humanoid beings crawling out of Lake Triumph, breaking into my uncle's home and mutilating me to shreds. A disturbing detail of my nightmares is that I'm not alone in being mauled alive. Old Man William is there as well. He is standing there naked and fearless, completely unfazed, while his flabby flesh and skin are being devoured. A complete juxtaposition to me. While he watches stoically, I am screaming, feeling every bit of burning pain. I am so exhausted. After another 2 days of raging blitzkrieg, the storms finally abated around 11:30 at night. I was staring at the lake in a somnambulistic daze from my room. The only thing illuminating the black darkness were the fireflies that floated over the water and the silent, impending thunder that was miles away, moving slowly in this direction like a slow giant. the tranquil scene was a facade. In truth, it was an ugly hour. It was a calm before my own personal storm. Old Man William's back porch light disturbed the glooming dark. Out of the belly of his abode, he shambled slowly towards the lake. His movements were much more labored than usual. I felt dread rise up in me when I realized he was heaving behind him a body. The primal urge to confirm what I had just seen took over me. I went to the front of the house to take the long way around to Lake Triumph. I didn't want to be spotted, so I stepped into the firefly darkness, not knowing that I was on the verge of witnessing a miracle. The air felt charged and ready for another storm as I trudged through the sodden grass. I watched as Old Man William finished submerging John's body in the lake. The old man groveled out of the water. A childlike giggle leaked out of his toothless maw. He regained his footing on the soaked ground. Almost instantaneously, those familiar mastications rose from the water again, but this time there was a difference to them. They were louder, more savage, like a group of pigs eating meat fervently. That same crippling terror that had held me in place last time returned, and it grew tenfold when the old man started talking to me.
My dear neighbor, there is no need for you to hide anymore. I know you've been there the whole time, the entire time. Come and bear witness to my angel's miracle. Come here and become an alibi to my existence.
He was beckoning me forward. I abandoned my hiding spot. The abhorrent dismantling of flesh and bones had become background noise. My natural instincts were screaming at me to run away, but my morbid curiosity was overpowering me, pulling me closer and closer to the water's edge. I wanted to see an angel's miracle. Abruptly, the shrieks, grunts, and snarls ceased in unison, and I stopped dead in my tracks. Old Man William breathed a long sigh of what seemed to be relief.
It is finally done, my dear neighbor. Stay with me until the witching hour.
Something started rising from the water. Multiple slimy humanoid hands gripped the grass. The unearthly imitations materialized themselves in this unholy night. They were imitating John's voice, the old man's voice, and my voice simultaneously. I could not fathom what I was looking at. Slowly I started backing away. My heart rate was increasing. Their postures were poised to lunge at me. They sprinted towards me and I fled. I slipped many times and I could hear their hungry movements and voices behind me. I managed to make it to my car and start the engine. The last thing I saw as I sped away was the old man standing in his front door, watching me. I was going dangerously fast down the mountain, and I was forced to slow down when it started raining heavily again. The blood in my head pounded at the thought of them lurking in the shadows of the mountain. I drove until morning until I reached town. I felt like my eyes were about to implode from the stress I was feeling. I wanted to believe everything that had happened was a fever dream, a schizophrenic delusion, but my mud-covered jeans and the vivid words of the old man were branded into my mind. I pulled into the gas station and loitered there for a good while, because I decided to call the police. I don't know if I was sending a couple of lambs to the slaughterhouse, but I needed someone else to see it, not just me. God, I was going to go mad if it was just me. I waited anxiously for their call back. I requested an update on John's condition. The only way I got the dispatcher to take my call seriously was by telling her that I saw John severely hurt to the point of mortis. After an hour or so, I finally got a call back. "Hello?" I said, trying to keep the nervousness out of my tone.
Young man, you do realize that the misuse of 911 is a jailable offense, especially for such a severe allegation.
Excuse me? I said, completely caught off guard. I expected a disaster. I expected a lot of things, but not this.
Son, you called earlier claiming a murder had occurred. We're here, and all we found is a happy family and John alive and well.
I was beyond confused. Family? John's alive. Nothing was making sense. No, officer, you must be mistaken. I saw it with my own eyes, I swear! I screamed into the phone.
Young man, whatever drugs you've been taking, you need to stop taking them immediately. Everyone here is fine,
he said, unperturbed by my supplications.
To give you some peace of mind, just listen to the grandpa playing with his grandchildren.
I heard the officer leaving his car, going outside. I heard the distinct sound of children playing on a swing set, but it sounded wrong. Their laughter had that gargling quality. My body started shivering uncontrollably, because I also heard two other voices accompanying the children's. John's voice, and a woman's voice I did not recognize. They also had that disgusting quality. The woman spoke with that gurgling tone.
Dad, you have to be careful. Don't hurt yourself pushing the kids. Let Daniel push them.
Some male, distorted, gross laughter joined the merry conversation. The officer had been talking with old man William the whole time, but I was too distracted to notice. The old man's raspy voice rose from the clamor of voices.
It's okay, officer. The young man just got confused. I don't want him to get in trouble. He's taking care of his uncle's home. He needs to return. He needs to come back to his family.
I hung up. My brain was boiling because he was right. I'm going back. I want to reject my blood, but the pull is strong. I'm going back because I'm chained to my family. I never had any other choice.